So today we're joined by icon kitchen designer Johnny Gray at Johnny Gray Studios near Petersfield. I'm really pleased to be doing this interview today. It's a great honour to be sharing with the industry the advice and solutions that Johnny has to offer. So I hope you enjoy today's legends. Johnny, so what year did you start in KBB furniture design?
When I was about 8 years old, probably.
Okay,
and I couldn't reach the sink.
Very young, yeah.
No, I don't know. I've always had a great love of furniture and making things. And my father was very keen for us to do woodwork, I think. I don't quite know why, but no, I mean, there was a whole, I can't avoid being a kitchen designer. It's like I'm fortunate I was a bit destined to it. That sounds a bit overdramatic, but I had an aunt who was a food writer, and at the age of when I was about, 12, she had a stroke and she lost her sense of taste. And the public didn't know about this. This is a woman called Elizabeth David. And so my father, who was her doctor at the time, said, look, why don't you start up a shop? So she started up the very first kitchen boutique shop, selling mostly imported stuff from France. And it's hard to believe this, but you couldn't buy decent cooking equipment at that point. This is in 1964. You really couldn't. And my first stop, whenever I was sent to a terrible boarding school, and when I came back to London, came back home, the very next day I take a bus to Pimlico and I go to her shop, and it was the most incredibly stylish thing. It was mostly in a basement, concrete floors, straw boxes, and this incredible cooking equipment.
So it was unique.
Oh, totally. And Terence Conran used her as a consultant. People ripped her off. Robert Carrier tried to rip her off. But this shop, she had a really, really good eye, and a lot of people don't really realise, but I think that her contribution towards British food culture also very much includes, if you like, kitchen utensil design.
So she was almost an inspiration.
She was my mentor. Absolutely, very much so.
Okay. So you actually got familiar and you got to know each other. Yeah.
Very much so. We used to have 5-hour lunches together. I was her driver when she was researching her bread book. So yes, I mean, so it was a little bit in my DNA. But the other thing is, my father was very keen for me to not be a potter, and all I really wanted to do was to make pots. That was my way of surviving my public school.
So if we could just talk about, let's talk about the uniqueness now. So how would you define the neuroscience of kitchen design?
Well, I'm very pleased you asked that. I came across neuroscience slightly by accident, so let me tell you a nice little story. So early days of email, I emailed Daniel Goleman, who wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, which sold 30 million copies worldwide in probably about 12 languages. And I thought, well, has anybody applied emotional intelligence to kitchen design or to interior design? So I thought, well, I'll email him, which is a bit bonkers, but I thought, well, I can't lose anything. Not thinking I'd ever get a reply. Within 2 days, I had a reply from his secretary saying, Daniel Goleman would like to see you. His wife's got all your books. We see you've got a studio in San Francisco and a showroom. Could we meet then, spend the day together? I nearly fell off my chair. I thought, how wonderful. And really the reason I was actually interested in what he was doing and what he did in the end was put me in touch with a neuroscientist called John Seisel.
Oh, actually a scientist?
Yeah, John Seisel is...
The concept
wrote the very first book on how you measure buildings. So he was a sociologist based at Harvard. And then started working with neuroscientists. And broadly speaking, what neuroscience can do is it gets you even information from somebody who doesn't put words out to you as a person.
It's factual rather than...
It's helpful because it gives you a sense of what somebody is not just trying to tell you because they want to impress you, but what is actually going on behind. In other words, it explains how instinct works. So when you see what the phrase they use is our hardwired needs, they're basically our instincts. So we started doing talks together, John Seisel and I. He started educating me in how you can use neuroscience to apply to design. And he looked very thoroughly and quite critically at my work. Now, I'd been obviously interested for a long time in trying to analyse what I was doing, because quite a lot of the time, you go into a job, you do it, it's great. But actually...
You do what you do.
But I'm always self-critical. I'm thinking, how can I do this better? And often you don't know how you can do it better. I mean, you can listen to the customer, but even the customer doesn't often know what they want, which is very interesting.
But self-analysing a very good thing, isn't it?
I think it's helpful. And the only thing you could really do in those days was something like feng shui. Now, it's all very well. Feng shui has something to offer, but it's also full of some rather useless shamanism as well. Anyway, I was starting to be able to if you like, diagnose whether my methods were kind of working, not just from customer feedback, but beyond that. And I can give you some very specific examples. Like one of the things one of the first books I read when I studied architecture was a book called Eye and Brain. That's IEYE, by a guy called W.R. Gregory, who looked about the structure of how the eye works. And he basically explained that peripheral vision is one of the things that actually, how would I put it, allows you to walk around a room without getting hurt. Now, if you have small, sharp corners in the middle of the room, like particularly on a central island, that triggers off your fight and flight response mechanism, which shuts down other parts of your brain, like the easy, good flowing, good thoughts.
So it's defense,
disappear. You go straight into defense mode.
Absolutely,
even on a micro level, this makes a difference, I can assure you. And I started realizing that this idea of soft geometry, or the use of curves, and no sharp corners.
Yes.
So I start off this with the kitchen design. I wrote about it in this book in 1994. It's got a chapter on soft geometry. And on the front cover, you can see that's a kitchen I did about 2 miles from here.
This is again very Padini. That's very curved. Yeah.
Padini copied me, and they will tell you that.
This is for the benefit of the camera.
And the reason I know that is because they did it about 10 years after this. And that's not just that, but if you look at the philosophy behind what I'm doing here,
very tactile, isn't it?
It's all about how the body moves. And what I was about to say to you is, as soon as you start to get into this idea that you can influence how the body behaves, then you're getting into real ergonomics. So my first real contribution to kitchen design was coming up, as you probably know, with this idea called the unfitted kitchen.
Yes.
The unfitted kitchen is using traditional idea of, if you like, characterful furniture.
More modular.
Slightly, yes, but most important of all, it's how they link together. And that's the magic. That's what I sold to Smallbone in 1986, with the idea of the unfitted kitchen, using freestanding furniture, but with really sophisticated, but invisible almost, ergonomics.
Right, okay. So in terms of all those things which are, let's say, very different to how most retailers would think and design, how do you choose your clients that will work on that project with you? Because there's two things there, isn't there? I'm
a terrible manipulator.
Because
I never choose my clients. Right. They choose me.
Okay. So are you primarily recommendations on the projects over the years that you've done?
The way it happened for me, I was very lucky. I had, I've got quite a strong philosophy, like we just discussed, but I got the ear or the eye of a number of magazine editors for almost from day one. I mean, I shouldn't have done it. I got far too much publicity far too early on. And the thing, it started in 1980, in August 1980, when the Sunday Times did a story called "Why This Awful Fixation with Fitted Kitchens." And I'm not joking, but I had something like 3,000 inquiries in about a month.
Good grief.
And I was getting work from that article 10 years later.
This goes back to what year, Johnny, where this used how many years ago?
1980.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. So this is pre-internet and
that's right. And then the design magazines, particularly the consumer ones, were interested because I was the first person to talk about real kitchen design for ordinary people. It wasn't. And what I was doing was saying, listen, there's a problem when you've got people designing kitchens which are all about counters around the wall. Now the Germans, God bless them, rebuilt Germany very fast after the war. They're not interested in
you start in the corner and you work out.
They're not interested in how people use the kitchen. They're interested in how they can make the kitchen fast, efficiently. They're their main aims, and deliver them.
So since you first, I guess, got involved in kitchen design, did you say 40 years ago?
Yeah.
Circa. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think over those years has been the change in UK kitchen designs, let's call it en masse? What changes have we seen in the market over 40 years? What fundamental changes, do you think?
I think there's not a lot of change in some ways. I think how people live is changing. I think how people build houses is changing. I think it's a very conservative industry, which hasn't changed very much. I think the unfitted kitchen has had some influence. I think funny enough, there's quite a lot of spin-offs from the unfitted kitchen that I see in kitchen design that's helped. And I know these might sound very strange things to you, but one of the best-selling features of the unfitted kitchen was willow baskets.
Willow baskets.
Now, willow baskets I introduced, which could be woven into frames.
Willow baskets.
Right? Yep. Okay. I was the first person to do that. I have the copyright on that with Smallbone. We decided it was going to be one of the big winners. In the end, Smallbone didn't enforce the copyright, so I've lost that.
Right.
But what's interesting is if you go to, say, Hettig in Germany and you see their warehouse, which I did when I was judging one of their competitions, 1,000 of these willow baskets were stacked up.
Right.
Now, why? Forget about me for the time being. Why do people want this? Because it shows something like some wonky handmade craftsmanship that gives some humanity to a kitchen. So my real interest is to bring humanity to kitchens.
Yeah.
And when I say nothing has changed, I'm not being completely, in a way, I don't want to be discursive about that. That isn't actually true.
Okay.
But all I'm really saying is we've got a lot of work to do to make kitchens more friendly. And I think the problems with social media, House and the others, are actually making people less adventurous than they were. And I think there's also a slight drop because of Brexit in people using handmade craftsmanship because price has become absolutely crucial, and a lot of people are not doing.
So do you think then, Johnny, when a customer comes into a kitchen showroom, let's say an average UK high street showroom, that they're probably getting delivered a very similar message. So what advice would you give a kitchen retailer to how to be different when the customer comes in?
Well, look, I totally understand that you've got to have a basic core low-cost kitchen, if you like, carcass system. That's fine. But what you do on the surface, I'm afraid to say, counts a great deal. I know, for example, in my own time, that when we used to deliver kitchens that were half painted, they would be delivered in the white, and then the person who gets all the credit, it's not us, it's the painter.
Right.
So that last little surface is important. So what I would advise your retailers to do is to think about ways of enlivening the surfaces of things. Better texture, softer shapes, add features, humanise it, leave space for people's furniture. Don't think about filling the space up too much.
Right.
So when I first launched the Unfitted Kitchen with Smallman, my job was to train all the designers.
So we'll charge for an extra 1,000 base unit, but actually think about what furniture the customer's got and how they move in the kitchen.
Okay, let's use that as an example. So
absolutely, yeah. Because there's a temptation, isn't there? There's space.
Don't fill that space up. Leave it a gap. So when we did our first prototype kitchen for the Smallbone directors, when I did for them, they were shocked at my design. So they got their designers to put a fitted kitchen design in front of them. And then they said, right, Johnny, now we're going to do a test for you. Okay. We think the unfitted kitchen is inefficient in terms of storage because of all the space you're going to leave. Added it all up. Guess which came top?
Cubic capacity.
And guess why I'm grinning?
We're talking cubic capacity.
Of course the unfitted kitchen comes top because basically
the mathematics of it,
if you think about a proper cupboard that goes floor to ceiling, as it were, you've got a lot of storage. If you have a counter, a gap, a half-depth wall cupboard, of course you're going to have less storage. And also you're going to have the irritation of hitting your face on the doors all the time. Now, think differently. Think about how historically people managed in their kitchens. And we're starting to, this is one of the new things that
back in time.
They had pantries. Now, the Americans never really abandoned pantries. We did. I'm not quite sure why, but anyway, it was a mistake.
I can remember my grandmother with some sliding doors in a pantry.
Because you can see it and you can see everything.
Correct.
And then there's less pressure on the furniture. So this conversation came up with the commercial director of Smallbone in the 80s. And he said, what are we going to do, Johnny? I said, look, it's not a problem. You're still going to make the same amount of money. But what you're going to do is you're going to charge people for better quality furniture. And it's going to be better designed. It's going to work more efficiently, but you'll have a sense of furnishing. So it's all about the kitchen going back to being like a furnished room. Why would you want your kitchen to be completely full of cabinetry so you can't move? What fun is there? How is that relaxed? How is that like a social room? It can't be. It becomes a laboratory, or a storage room. No thanks.
So you're saying think about the customer's lifestyle as well. And how they move in the kitchen.
Of course, how they move around, how they use it, what they feel. Imagine how.
So maybe then the kitchen retailer needs to ask potentially more questions about lifestyle.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
The customer comes in,
especially now, as we know that in open plan, they are ostensibly the aesthetic is dominant. The dominant aesthetic is the living room.
The dining room's now gone. Let's say you are a budding kitchen designer, and you would now like to, now you've, let's say, graduated and you've designed a few kitchens for an independent, you've worked for them, and you want to set up your own showroom. What advice, Johnny, could you give that individual setting out in their own business?
Okay, think about the difference between design and sales. And this is what I talk to my students about. Okay, now, sales is where you're basically just trying to make money, and you've got a product that you're trying to deliver them. Now, in kitchens, you're selling spatial design. That's what triggers off, ultimately, the client's response. Are they going to feel good in this space? So you need to have some idea about what makes people feel comfortable, number one. Number two is you can upsell, no problem, if they believe in you. So you've got to basically be truthful, and sometimes you've got to say no. The difference between a salesperson and a designer is a designer at times is prepared to say no.
Right, okay.
Advise them. Be their friend. Okay. And hold up a mirror. So the first thing I do...
So I'm here to advise you not to sell to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost say that to the customer, potentially.
Yeah. Imagine you're a bit of an architect. Imagine you're an interior designer. You're thinking about space. And say to them, listen, okay, so we're right next to your garden, but there's no French doors. The best thing I did up at the house here, when we had hardly any money when we first arrived, I put in French doors, and I had £3,000 left to spend on my kitchen as a result. But you know what? I've never regretted that decision.
You brought the outside in, and it's changed your lifestyle.
It's changed the room, and you can immediately start to use the outside. Yes. But more important than that, you're saying something to them which they can see is against your own interest, but it's pro theirs.
It's pro theirs. Yeah.
So, for example,
so you're on their side, basically.
Exactly. So you're acting like a professional, which is why I wanted to set up the course in the first place.
So we're going to come back on to that.
So,
perfect.
So what I would really say is, if you're trying to build a relationship with a customer, you've got to give them some truthful stuff, which may not be in your own immediate commercial interest.
Right.
But let me just give a lovely little story, which is that many years ago I got called to somebody who paid a deposit on a small burn kitchen. This is after I left Small Burns. This is in the early 90s. Okay. And Small wouldn't give them my number because they were obviously concerned I might be disrupt their sales processes in the future. And I went to see their kitchen, and they said, we've got this kitchen, it's L-shaped, and Smallburn had put my unfitted kitchen pieces around an L-shape. So you had a sink on one wall and the cooking area on another. So all the time you were going to have to walk around the corner to do all your cooking. Okay. I just said, look, all you need to do is to put a small conservatory on, just a tiny conservatory to make this a square room, and then you can have a central island, and you'll be able to cook and prepare food on an island looking into the room.
More practical too. Yeah.
And I said, we've just got a budget of 40,000. So I said, look, spend your money on the conservatory. I'll help you do that. I'll put you in, whatever. Yeah. And then we'll just tell me what budget we've got left. I think we had £15,000 left to build this kitchen. And they came back to me every year for about 8 years after that. Wow. Because of the honesty that I'd shown and the lack of self-interest.
So it wasn't about getting the value of the cabinets in day one, it's about working as a long-term project. So what you're saying there, which is good advice, is then the customer will come back to you again. So when they want their bedroom done
upstairs or their bathroom, they come to you as well because they trust you.
They trust you. Oh, that's good advice. Brilliant. So in terms of that then, so how would you recommend others to be as successful as you've been over your career? What do you think, what are the primary drivers for success in this business?
Well, one of them is, I think that is a sort of empathy for their lifestyles. And I don't mean that...
So back to life, it's all about lifestyle.
And I hate using that word.
No, but it's very important, isn't it?
Let's just say their lives, if you like. Or, and a sense of fun.
Do you think people are scared to ask those questions then?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. And sometimes it goes wrong. I mean, I'm not saying... I can tell you some very interesting stories about projects I've lost. Yeah. Which I don't, in a way, I don't really regret. I mean, I do in some ways, but I don't in others. I think you've got to have somehow communicate a sense that you are going to give them something for the long term, probably. And I'd like
long-term value, rather than short-term value.
And communicate a message of enthusiasm for the product, which is beyond merely making a sale. Okay. So, for example, one of the things I try to do is when we make a kitchen for somebody is to get them down to the workshops. And so then if something goes wrong...
They're involved in that process almost,
and they see how hard it is to make, because it is hard to make these things. Yeah. And then, if, say, something goes wrong with the installation process or something happens afterwards, they've got this knowledge.
Understand it better.
Yeah, that's right. They've got knowledge that people have bothered, and cared. And the other thing is try to take some risks occasionally. As I said, hold up a mirror to the client saying, have you thought about this? Have you thought about making a hole in the wall so the room can be bigger? Have you thought about maybe, having a central island or whatever the risk might be? Yeah, sure. So what I do with that, and this is what how we train the students a bit, is never show them one design. Try and do at least 2 or 3, and ideally do one design, and it doesn't have to be, it can be a sketch, it doesn't have to be a great big visual. Do one sketch of what you think they want, do one sketch of what you think you want to do with the space. So
you provide almost options.
Yeah, and then do one that is absolutely off the wall with some fun.
Okay.
And then you can mix and match afterwards.
Of course.
And you'd be staggered about people's response to that.
Of course. How do customers visualise? Because in my experience, it's difficult for someone outside the industry to understand what you're portraying.
Well, there are several things that you can do. In the old days...
How do you do it? What's the best way works for you?
How do I do it? Well, we've got these visuals on the wall, which you can see
so
here.
These are just for the benefit of the camera. These are hand drawings, and they're coloured.
Well, they are hand drawings, but they're based on CAD modelling nowadays.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the past, but yes.
It's very personal, isn't it?
Yes, and don't show them CAD drawings at the beginning either. That's a failure.
So your advice would be not just to show a Me Too CAD drawing to begin with?
Don't do that. But what you can do the CAD drawing, hand sketch over it. Because the second you put hand lines on something, it's rather like reading a good novel. There is space for people to use their imagination.
Right, okay.
If you show an engineered drawing, it's soulless.
Right.
Allow them some space to imagine.
Right.
Okay? And it's not difficult. Everybody can trace over a CAD drawing. Just do it. And do it on a nice bit of paper. And if you've got a bit of watercolour or if you've got a crayon, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, you want it to be imperfect.
Yeah, it shows a bit you put a little bit more effort, thought, attention than perhaps the guy down the road.
I would.
It's good advice. Good advice.
And personalises it too, even in a modest way.
Okay. So let's say you are working in a kitchen showroom and you are the administration person, but you'd love to get into kitchen design. And the industry now is all about training, education, and who's the next designer going to be. So I'm very aware that you're very involved in TCAT, the Kitchen Education Trust, and I think it's fabulous to invest in people and move the business forward in terms of the industry and good quality designers. So how did you set up, and who did you set up TCAT with?
Well, it's got a very nice start.
Yes.
I'm doing some filming with Kevin McLeod at a project we did in Bath.
Fabulous, yeah.
And there's some problem with, the filming. We have to go off to the pub. So we spend an hour together talking while they fix the cameras or whatever it is. And I have a rant about how terrible kitchen design is. And Kevin says, listen, if you're so smart, you write a course, you do it. I said, no, I can't.
Right.
And then he said, right, look, I tell you what.
So he gave you a challenge?
He did. He said, listen, I'll provide you with a platform. I'll get the kitchen industry together for you at a Grand Designs live event. And you can tell them what you want to do. It was about professionalising the industry, because I'm appalled about the way the kitchen is the most expensive purchase people make apart from buying the house. It's more expensive mostly than buying a car. And yet the amount of design time, on average, is something like an hour and a half.
It could be less, couldn't it? Yeah.
So how can I stand there and put up with this and be a kitchen designer? I felt I couldn't. And by the way, I'd go to parties saying I was a kitchen designer and people would roll their eyes at me. And here was this guy who trained to be an architect, posh middle-class bloke, and you're a kitchen designer? Really? That's not good enough. So now if you look at the lighting industry, for example, look what they've done in 10 years. They are now one of the most professional industries, and they have a huge business potential. I mean, do you know a lighting designer isn't busy? Because I don't. They have events organised by an Anglo-German couple, PHLD or whatever it's called, and they have 2,000 designers turn up in London to learn and to show, they write papers on new lighting concepts.
Yes.
Why aren't we doing that?
It's a big growth market.
So the end result of all this was we did do this event about 6 years ago at a Grand Designs Live. Kevin chaired the event and I was the last person on. And I just basically said, it's time we got our act together and we professionalised. And there was a professor from Berks New University, which in those days hosted the National College of Furniture. It's the heart of the British furniture industry, High Wycombe. And she said, I love your talk, would you please come and write the course?
Okay.
So we started writing it. It was pretty chaotic. There was an attempt which failed to have a full-time residential course, partly because the UCAS wouldn't allow us to put the word kitchen design into their search engine functions. Berks University left themselves a month to try and recruit students. So we had to go back to the drawing board. I think we got 2 applications or something pathetic. And that's when I got hold of Craig and I started to get hold of the industry. Right. And we were supported very generously, mostly by European kitchen companies.
Interesting. So, see, on the back of the design aspect again, I mean, on that book there is a great example where we've got this curved kitchen feature on the front cover. So how does the installer, what's the word I'm looking for, understand that, and how do they enjoy that fit?
Look,
Or don't they enjoy the fit? Being controversial.
Look, well, fitting is very stressful in some ways, but it's also, if you get it right, it's wonderful. Fitting, you have to wear several hats. You are basically, you're the customer, you're the face of the company for a start.
You're the ambassador, aren't you?
You are. Yeah. But, and so you do need to have some basic skills. But
do you think there's less people coming into kitchen insulation, do you think, today's marketplace than there were 20 years ago?
I can't say. You probably would know more than me. I would have thought very different because the industry is slightly bigger. If the installer knows that you love the product and that you know about furniture and the issues around it and that you're going to care about the end result, and you go in there and you say, look, actually, that particular detail, I think we need to improve it. I mean, I will go to a kitchen after the installation process and I'll point out the errors to the client. I'll say, listen, I'm sorry about this. This is what we did here. Are you okay with it?
Right.
Say we've had to modify something.
You're offering solutions, as you go through
when
the project.
You do that, people say, no, that's fine. I mean, for me, I feel so sad I don't go and see my kitchens more often because I love them. Not every single one, but I do mostly think to myself, I've done something,
Well, it's your creation, isn't it?
Yeah. And people should be proud of that,
isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
I'd probably take too much credit, but I'm pleased to take credit for the designers who've worked for me, with the incredible furniture makers that I've worked with.
So from the kitchen to the inquiry in the first place initially, so I have to say we obviously offer websites as part of our service, but your website, Johnny Gray Studio, is phenomenal in terms of being different. And looking at what you've created there, Johnny, you've got a fantastic pink kitchen on your landing page. You've got some fabulous people there that shine in terms of we are the business, and that's what every website should be.
Well, I think it's worth.
So what advice can you give someone that's looking to review their website, and how important is a website?
Well, the website is incredibly important, unfortunately. I think it's unfortunate the way that the digital communications has taken over so much. Have something different, have a story on the front page.
Something unique.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have to do a blog, but because blogs are new, but show some news, show a bit of a story, and focus on one small thing. I mean, sometimes a small detail just trigger people off, even a couple of the right words. Maybe show a kitchen in action. Try to bring the kitchen to life.
One of the things I was going to ask you was, I think when there's a website to be built or to be developed or updated, the client interaction with the website builder is massively important. I mean, looking at your website, it oozes that you've probably been involved in every single detail of that site.
I'll have to tell you the truth of the story.
Yeah, I'd love to hear the truth, yeah.
My son did it entirely on his own.
Did he really? But then maybe he knows Dad.
Yes, and my wife did all the writing. And actually, funny enough, I had a very charming compliment from somebody a couple of months ago saying it's one of the nicest written websites in terms of all the text. And that is my wife. She's awesome with words.
Right. So looking at the future of kitchen retailing, who do you think the leading players are going to be? Who's going to be the winners for the future?
Well, I really, really hope that independent retailers can get their act together more. I feel that they are a really good asset in this country. We've been it's quite interesting. If you look at, say, British custom-made kitchens, they are definitely better than most other countries. And this is I'm not trying to be jingoistic about this at all.
Just be generic.
I think we've got a sort of bigger pool of joinery companies who basically turned. It's really interesting if you look back at what happened when I first started criticising German fitted kitchens in the 1980s. Most joinery shops made joinery.
Right.
Then I come along and say, listen, guys, to Smallburn, we're going to do this unfitted kitchen. We're going to make kitchens out of furniture, not units. They're banned. That word is banned here.
I won't mention 1,000 bases.
No, it's fine. We have always have a laugh about it. But the joinery companies, I think, triggered it off because I had conversations with the chairman of Smallburn about 2 years after we launched Unfitted Kitchen saying, Johnny, do you realise how many joinery companies are now ripping off Smallburn? They are now our main worry. Our shareholders are now worried about our customers being lost to joinery firms. Right. Now, there's more joinery firms in the UK than there were in other countries all around the world because we've got this history of having a small furniture workshop in each village. I think. I wish somebody would do a study on this because, I'd like to have that confirmed. But I'm pretty much sure that that's the case. Now, those joinery companies turn themselves often into kitchen companies because, hey, that's the best market.
So
why would you want to make a piece of sitting room furniture, a one-off bookcase, when you can make an entire kitchen and make a proper project?
So do you think, Johnny, there's a growth for, without mentioning names, like an out-of-town retail park retailer, kitchen retailer? Is there growth in that department, or do you think the high street's struggling, and where should the best location be for an independent?
They must stay in the high street, and the high street will revive in time. It'll change, but it will revive.
Sure.
So hopefully, if we can get slightly cheaper leases, and the coffee shops and the libraries reviving themselves,
rates relief and so forth.
I think that actually kitchen comes to be quite well placed. Maybe the best thing to do is to try and engage with your community in a way that perhaps you don't right now, which is to offer, evenings when you maybe host somebody to come and talk about design, or you have some kind of cafe next door where you can have, you can just cross over the road with your client. You want to try and create this as a bit of a community.
Okay, so if a kitchen retailer says, actually, Johnny, no one's coming in the showroom, it's deadly quiet, what should they do then? No one's coming in the high street, they're not coming in the door. What can they do to help that situation?
Well, you've got to find a way of connecting with local people. And so, how do you do it? Obviously, you can't disengage from social media either.
Okay.
Very clearly.
Digital marketing is still very important.
Oh yeah, but the great thing is, if your location is reasonably good, you will pick up customers that other people won't get, who won't use social media. So
location is actually very key to it, isn't it?
I would have thought so.
Parking?
I think more footfall.
Traffic.
I wouldn't worry. Initially, I wouldn't worry about parking too much. That could become an issue maybe for some people. I think the most important thing is the sort of football,
passing traffic.
Absolutely, yeah.
And asking the right questions, we said before. That's it. Okay, good. Yeah. So just to finalise on today's...
Can I just also say, one thing you might find helpful would be to contact local firms of architects.
Contact local firms of architects.
Architects use kitchen companies, retailers.
So get specified almost.
I don't get asked by architects very much because they see me as competitors.
Right.
But most architects will use a local kitchen company.
Okay.
Get hold of a phone book and get hold of people and estate agents.
Okay. Yeah.
And try and show some.
So that first point of contact.
Yeah. Show some pictures
new house, new kitchen, new bathroom.
Show some pictures on your website that might perhaps say, "Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that."
Or it's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Goes back to your first homepage and why you're different, what you're going to offer the customer.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so just to finalise on, if we can, on today's conversation, can you relay an amusing story from your career that other people can learn from?
I can share some nice stories, unless you want me to share me some scary stories. Okay, this is basically a nice story.
Okay.
So a lady comes to see me who wants a kitchen designed, and she's seen that I do things that are slightly different, and we start the process off. And then after about a month, nothing really happens, and I show the designs, and she says, "I'm sorry, my husband's been relocated to Hong Kong for a couple of years." I thought, well, that's gone, And then after about 18 months, she's back in England briefly. She said, "Well, coming back to England, we'd like to re-engage." And she said, "Look, I'd like you to, been in Hong Kong, we'd like you to think of something that's kind of just a little bit different. We don't really want anything too traditional." And I noticed that she was wearing really, how do I put it, glamorous shoes. Okay, I won't say any more than that at this point. So, in fact, shoes come up twice. I'll tell you the next story, but it's also about shoes, about Swiss shoes. Anyway, so we start drawing this up, and I sort of came up with this idea of a central island, which is like a kind of a giant breakfast bar, but it's like a piece of sculpture, sort of organic shape. It was a bit like a kind of, how would I describe it? Almost a bit like a kind of a bulb growing out of the floor. Right. So anyway, we do a very, very rough sketch. Yeah. She comes here. She comes next door.
Right.
And she looks at the drawing and she says, "How did you know?" So, "What do you mean?" I said, How did you know? I've got a shoe fetish."
Oh, no way.
We designed a high-heeled. A bar in the shape of a high-heeled shoe.
Amazing, yeah.
And
where did that concept come from?
I think it was completely weird and subliminal. I hadn't really thought about it very much. It just worked itself into this shape.
And she's got that. That's what she told you back. That's what she liked.
So then we installed this kitchen.
Oh, she went for that. Yeah.
Yeah, she did. And she says every morning she comes down. And as she comes down from her kind of probably her evening of being overhung and drinking and eating too much or whatever it is, no, I'm not sure, she's a lovely woman, so I hope she's not listening to this. Right. It makes her smile.
Right, yeah.
Now,
because of the match, you're saying, yeah.
Well,
in terms
just
of your
because of the
vision
shape,
to what she
the
likes,
sense of fun, the unexpectedness. So
Yes.
what I'm really saying is, translating emotions into design is the holy grail of all designers.
Yeah.
So if I can do that once or twice, that makes me feel good.
But I guess you were very sure of your client in that conversation, on that proposal.
But look, it was a sketch. She could have said no.
Yes.
And you know, but all I'm really saying is, if you don't show people an idea,
no difference. So you're also saying
the conversation doesn't start.
Be bold, take that risk potentially. Then
just try. Push the boundary a little bit, or somehow engage in something a bit different.
Yes.
So the other shoe story is much more pragmatic. So I get some publicity in an American magazine called Metropolitan Home, which became a big fan of mine. And another Swiss banker lady turns up and says she wants me to design a kitchen. Takes me on the phone, so she's going to fly in from Zurich. I pick her up from the airport to show her some kitchens because she's asked to see some work we've done. And there's two other rather glamorous ladies with her. So I've now got 3 Swiss bankers' wives, right? All of whom want kitchens. I think, I didn't know any of this. What am I going to make? We take one little tour of London, these kitchens I've done. And all fine, start the design work, come back here. Each one's assigned to a designer. And 6 weeks later, I go off to Zurich, and I'm thinking, great, I'll be picked up by a limo. I'll take the night off, and then I'll present to them next morning. Not a bit of it. They pick me up. A chauffeur-driven car picks me up, takes me straight to a restaurant. It's 3:00 in the afternoon, and all of them are sitting there waiting for me. And I think,
from the airport straight to the restaurant.
Yeah, no rest, nothing. And there's 3 Swiss bankers, and there's 3 Swiss wives.
Right.
And I showed them the drawings, a bit like this. And they're thinking, oh, that's quite nice. Now, at this point, the Swiss franc's very low and the pound is very high. And they look at the pricing, and I could see there's definitely a problem.
Right.
So one of them, the guy says to me, Arthur de Curtin says to me, Johnny, he says, now, why would you buy a kitchen off a British designer when the British can't cook? They don't know how to cook. And I thought to myself, good point. Why would you?
That was his objection,
So at this point, I said, so this is when it was the lovely moment. God knows where these things come from.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'm going to play this. So I said, will you please stand up? I said, what do you mean? I said, just stand up. I said, look at your shoes. I was guessing, because they all commuted into the city of London, they'd all be wearing Church's shoes. 2 out of 3 were wearing Church's shoes. So I said, that's why, because we do incredible craftsmanship.
And where were they made exactly?
And we know how to do it in a stylish way that is not over the top.
Yes.
So this is not Italian design.
Yes.
This is British design.
Okay. It's a great story. It's a great story.
Big grin on the face. Big tick on there.
Right.
All went ahead. Now, then there's another
objection beaten.
Absolutely. And what was this is a really nice story probably for us to end on, which is so 2 years later or a year later, whatever, I take the editor of House and Garden out who wants to see these 3 Swiss kitchens. And we're having dinner and we're being cooked for in this kitchen. And we're just about to go to bed, and the client says, look, I just need to tell you that in the middle of the night you're going to hear some clanking sounds. Because the Swiss engineer who designed these buildings hadn't worked out the contraction and expansion of heat joints properly. So he said, you will hear contortions tonight, but don't worry, the building won't fall down. And then there's a grin on her face, and she turns to the editor of House and Garden and she says, I want to tell you, I'm going to apologise to you, Johnny, but when we first engaged you, the Swiss builders and the architects said what a bad decision it was to use anybody from Britain to manufacture anything because of how badly our cars had been made in the last 15, 20 years. Don't do it. It'd be full of problems. The only company they've never had any problems with, and I've never been back, was us.
Right.
The Swiss builders were problems.
Right.
Things weren't finished.
So
the clanking ironmongery.
You're a British solution provider, no issues with the one.
I think it was back to the same thing, which is we made these kitchens really, really well. Right. I mean, we just made sure everything was right before it got into that container.
Chip belt and braces and checked and twice checked,
Absolutely. And it had to be perfect.
And it was. Great story,
And they're still friends, I mean, one of the lovely things about being able to take the time and trouble to do these things, if it all goes right. So
Johnny, thanks very much for today. It's been a great conversation. I think lots of advice we can share in terms of the posting after this conversation today, and hopefully somebody gets something out of it. That's what it's all about.
And let me say thank you, and also let me extend an invitation. When we do these residential weekends, we often have one lead speaker.
Okay.
I would be delighted to
Okay.
offer anybody who's listening the chance to come to these talks, because some of them are...
Who can offer something back, yeah, perfect, yeah.
And, you know, there may be a small charge for the catering or something, but
Sure.
I'd like to offer it free to anybody who really wants to come.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Yeah.
We really like to kind of make people more enthusiastic about the cultural capital that's involved in being a good kitchen retailer.
Great.
You need to have that, and then people will come.
So we hope you've enjoyed today's discussion with Johnny Gray here today at Johnny Gray Design Studio. We hope we've delivered a lot of good, smart advice for the industry. And if you've liked what you've seen, press like. If you'd like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, press subscribe. We love the comments, so if you'd like to leave some comments about what you've seen today, we'll reply back to every comment that you leave. And hopefully we'll be talking to you real soon with our next Legend series. So thank you for watching.